Well, if you want to, yeah, no problem.
Yeah, so I'll share your test if you can go through it a little bit, how you use it, and let's see.
Yeah, sure.
There you go. So sorry, Marty, this isn't finished, but this is
It's perfect.
Translate that if you need.
It's great.
So Jarkko, you want to go through how you use it and the basic idea?
Sure, why not?
Yeah.
Why not?
So.
Yeah. Well, basically, this is the sort of a wedge game that I pretty much every my, let's say, decent player has gone through at least once or twice or gazillion times. Basically, it's because my sort of job was to make something with a wedge game inside of, was it 50 meters or something like that? So this is basically for 50 or 60 meters. I don't remember. Yeah, 60. Okay. So, but basically, you just measure some sort of a ring around the flag. Basically, this is now with 1 meter, 3 meter, 5 meter circles basically around the green. So making a big or small, or of course the target is the flag, but still. So you put a ball within 1 meter, you get 5 points. You put it within 3 meters of the flag, and you get, or actually 1.5 meters, depends on the basically the level of the player. So what sort of a width do you want to use with that circle? So and if you make it or hold it, then it's 10 points. But 1 meter 5 points, 3 meters 3 points, 5 meters 1 point, sorry, and to hold it with 10 points. And this I usually do with sort of better players and get to know first of all what sort of a clubs they use, because that's been, I would say, at least interesting. so there's guys who would love to use from 40 meters with a elevated green and take an 8 iron or 7 iron or something, and other guys would take a 60-degree wedge. So at least I get to know them and their game, sort of what sort of shots they see and feel and what sort of clubs they use. Yeah, there's that. I actually made one guy who's a professional now that make him practice. I don't remember what did I sort of wanted him to have, but to have sort of amount of points with 18 balls, 3 balls each from those measures, and at first he had like half of those points that I sort of demanded, and after 1 hour or something, it was like 2/3, and then I had to go, went home. He stayed there practice, and I got a message at 1:30 at night that I just now finished my job, so I'm going home. And at that message there was a picture of his car's lights sort of lighting the green. So it was very dark in Finland, as you probably know, Marty.
Wow, and
I was so proud of him. I was so proud of him, and make him that. Told him that's the best practice you've ever made. So the idea was not to go home before you finish this and get a certain amount of points. But yeah, this is sort of a like very one of my practices that I use a lot, and that the idea with those measures is that you never hit 2 balls from the same distance. So basically, I usually start with 10 meters, go to 30 meters, then 50 meters, and then 20, 40, and 60. So they cannot, like, how do you call that? Use the previous shot. So they have to yeah, you know,
adjust,
the idea. Adjust, yeah. And then the other one, my job was to make some sort of game or practice or something to measure with the driving, or at least the tee shots. And the first one here is there's those six sort of ball shapes. You wanna see the flight shapes. First is high, second is low, then fade draw, slice hook. So basically there are 6 of them, and not sort of using the shot that they would easily see. or think. That's the way to sort of mess their game and see how they execute the shots with the different heights and shapes. Usually I tell them to hit the shot that's like most awkward to them so I can see how they create it and they see it at least and stuff like that. And that there's a six different shapes, so I always tell them that you don't need me here to tell you which sort of shot you're hitting. You can use the dice. There's six sides of it, so that's pretty easy. And then the last part is something that I use always in course practicing or course coaching. Basically, I don't like the hitting the fairway percent or something like that, because the shot might be pretty good, but still you have missed the fairway. So basically, when coaching in course environment, I always tell them that give yourself a grade from 1 to 10 or 4 to 10. That how good was that? So basically, what I've been telling here or writing here is that if you miss the fairway for 2 meters and it's the right side of the fairway and it's pretty long in your own like capabilities, then it's a good shot. You can give it a 9 out of 10. Still, you have missed the fairway. So I don't like them to just miss fairway minus made fairway plus. That doesn't give me anything. So that's one way to do it, and especially if you know the lie is good on the right side, and you better get to the green from the right side of the fairway, and then you miss it for basically 5 meters. The shot is still good. So that's basically it.
Do you how often do you use these with players? Let's say these last ones on course practice.
That the first part basically only with better players, of course, but that's what every third of the practice in course, and the last one is for everyone that I sort of practice or coach on the course with, and I always make them to write at least 5 different things for the scoring card. So not just the scores, but chips and putts and that sort of a what do you call it? Like well the number between 4 and 10 or 1 and 10, and how good their number were. Grade, yeah.
Do they?
That for everyone. Yeah.
Do the players on the second one, the last one, would they give themselves a kind of a number of the t-shirts? Do you ask them to keep records like for long term, and you can see?
Yeah, that's
to go through the.
That's the idea. So they get to see their progress and get to see actually that let's say that usually their handicap is like 0 or something. So they usually hit 72, 73, 68, whatever, and they can see that their t-shots was actually like 8.9 or 8.5 on average. So that wasn't the problem.
Yeah.
But still they might think so. So there's other measures, of course, for the course playing as well. But let's see at least 5.
Good.
So start to or hoping that they will use that as a like guideline for every round they play, or at least every now and then, so they can see how good they play. And usually they play with the same course, so it's pretty easy to measure. Well, that's at least a few of those.
I actually think it's brilliant. That's great. I love what you said earlier though. In the short game one, sort of inside 60, which you set up the structure and perfectly spot on with randomizing it so they can't hit the same shot twice, and there's a point system with it. But to allow them to then, for you in a training environment, to look at their decision making, which I think that's us as coaches, that we learn so much with watching them, how they kind of respond on course or in situations like this in practice. for you to be able to set up a skills test as such where you can really start to look at kind of how they, decision making, how they choose the clubs they choose. And that allows you to have a really open conversation around their results on, that's a great option, or have you ever thought about X?
Exactly. Yeah.
And then more importantly, as we know that, you'll know, your players better than anyone that there's certain shots that you're setting up in their skills test, that they can't hit. You just know that. So that's a learning environment right there that, technically the way they move and the shot that they try to choose doesn't allow them to, execute the shot. So when they can't execute that, that's just a great moment for, when you debrief, as you clearly already do, is to go, okay, well, here's some options here that, we can look at it this way, we can look at your mechanics this way, and then go and obviously then retest.
Exactly. So they're pretty open to change things when they see that, okay, this is not clearly working from this distance with this club. So they're listening then, so ready to take the information in.
Yeah, brilliant. That's fantastic. I love it. And hopefully we all don't need to get the lights on before we leave, but I think that's pretty cool.
Yeah, I was laughing my butt off when I received that.
You're right though. You get that from an athlete and you go, or a player that you just go, well, that's really cool. That guy's committed or girl's committed to kind of, to the task, and he or she just kind of problem solve their way out. And then unfortunately it took till the middle of the night to be able to get it done. But
exactly.
But that intent the next day when they go out to do it again, and their focus is going to be so different in it, because they actually now understand the level that they need to play at, and decision making that they need to, that's required to be able to execute those shots.
Yeah, exactly, and they get to see the sort of problem areas as well, and try to make them always, of course, aim a little bit higher, and with this practice, it's almost good to make those the same green, the same place to hit it, and the same distances, so then they can see the measure how they progress, and of course then you can vary that very much with different players. So basically you can have a circle of 15 meters for some person, and he would be happy to hit that green from 60 meters. So that's what you get. But yeah, it's amazing how many different clubs you see and shot shapes that they're thinking. Yeah. It's unbelievable, and they're not poor by any means. They're good at what they do. with a very different club that I would use.
Yeah. Well, as I said, that's the greatest thing about kind of setting this kind of template up there, is that for the coach and the player is allowing them to be exposed. So exposing you to how they think and how they've gone through that situation to be able to execute that shot. Vice versa, you being able to, expose them to a shot that gives them more questions for you, or for them to ask you about, well, I just can't do this right now. So that's a great learning environment right there, where these guys and girls are able to kind of go, okay, we're going through this exercise. I need answers. I need help. Where I think we kind of generalize, in many ways, and we're all guilty of it as well. The short game, there's chipping. This is my chipping fundamentals. This is my bunker fundamentals. This is full swing, whatever it may be. But as you know, as soon as you move the ball 2 meters to the left or 3 meters to the right, and the pin's on a different angle, that changes everything.
Mm-hmm.
We were just kind of on a side note to that, just chatting to the Swedish boys coach here just the other day. They had their boys team here in Spain, and so they had them do a lot of skills tests, and but there's also tournament play. So turns out that the guy who's you could say technically not the best looking, or the kind of fundamentally you kind of look at it, you could pick apart a little bit like a Jim Furyk kind of type. By far the best player. As soon as you put a card in his pocket, he's the one with the lowest score every single day.
Mm. Yeah.
So I thought that was quite interesting, in that they were kind of using that as a way to not just looking at skills testing, they were also looking, okay, well, how does this actually transfer to the course? So there's somebody who's kind of middle of the road in a test environment, but as soon as you put him in a competitive environment, he's a different animal.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think, like you mentioned, I think it's really kind of important to expose them to different kind of situations, because you can see how they start to perform. If you can have somebody who's like technique doesn't look that great, but they're actually really skillful. So even if you put them in tough places, they have the kind of the way to manage it. And then you can see someone with really like superb looking technique, and then you put them in a different situation and they just kind of collapse. So they can't kind of they don't have the skill to adapt to different locations. So before
can you still hear me? Can you still hear me?
Yes.
Yeah. And you can put it that then other way around as well. So if you want to, usually I do that on the other round. I'll do it with from bunker. So basically, there's a tier circles in every 10 meters from bunker, and you change those. That's a good practice as well. But of course, I had a wedge game. Well, that's a wedge shot.
Yeah.
So basically, if you are lucky enough to have a practice bunker that you can hit it for the range or something like that, as we are.
Yeah.
Good. Thank you, Jarkko.
Yeah, thank you.
No, very good. That's great.
Any questions from other participants to Jarkko, or comments about these? Please interact and just open the mic and say what you're going to say. So don't be shy. Let's see if we have.
They are, as you know.
I'm gonna come and try out that wedge test the next time I'm home. So see how long we stay there.
See if you need those lights. But
you have to start early in the morning, so
yeah, exactly.
Just in saying that as well, and on the back of what you just said there, you'd look at maybe not test so well in some environments and test in other environments. Well, at some point you can actually raise the bar a little bit and make it more of a mental challenge and look at how they respond. And then start to get more into kind of obviously, areas that obviously as coaches that we're aware of and understand around the kind of sports psych and routines and everything else. But also then start to drill a little bit deeper into kind of, those certain shots that actually then impact results, and how that then correlates to potentially how they respond and react on course. So I think our goal in many ways is, if you know the player or know the person well enough, can you put them or come up with a scenario or situation where you're going to really challenge them to the point that they're going to crack. And I think I've said it before, but I've had guys snap golf clubs in practice sessions and throw clubs and do all sorts of stuff. And that's not a comfortable situation, but you you need to break them a little bit to be able to kind of allow them to then go, you know what, I need to know more. So I think what you're doing there is just fantastic. I think, and then really putting the heat on that is especially as you said, that you're doing that with the better players. You're not going to do that with the club level players just trying to get out of the bunker. But for the players that are really sort of serious about it, that's a great opportunity.
I'm not sure. Kari was supposed to. Kari, are you online? I can't see your name here. So if you're with the alias, please let me know. But Kari was supposed to go through his test. But if he's not here, then maybe I'll. If I show what we've been doing lately in our junior practice, or is it okay?
Right.
Let's see. So. Kind of this is one that we use with their this is actually driving test, but I'll show the long game test as well. So basically they get points of on accuracy. So basically there's let's see if we take, so this guy hit 10 shots, they hit 10 shots, and then we take the kind of the distances from TrackMan and the numbers from TrackMan as well. So we kind of get their spread of shot patterns, and then they get points if they miss under 5% of the distance they hit. They get 3 points. 5.1 to 7.5% is 2 points, and 7.6 to 10% sideways is 1 point. If they miss it more, then it's 0 points. We're also kind of it's kind of under development as well. So kind of in like in yours, Marty, it's that maybe thinking this is kind of been using it more as a tool for us coaches, so we can kind of see what they're doing, their patterns, because we're kind of on the edge of moving outdoors. So we want to start.
Yeah, that was my question. Was this done? This is done indoors.
Yeah, this is indoors with TrackMan. So now kind of we are probably going to move outdoors in 3 weeks or so. So we're now kind of end of the indoor season. So we started in November or late October, and been going through movement and kind of the building the basics, and with drivers, especially building up speed, all the angle of attack, maybe with some players, so the technical stuff. But now we're kind of cycling with the every other practice is kind of feedback from the performance test that we always do kind of on Fridays. So today it's performance testing, different kind, and then on Monday we kind of give feedback and do practice and plan their practice with them to kind of focus on these kind of different things. So like with Jarkko's test, I think this has been a really good kind of way to communicating to the players that why these things are important. So even though they're practicing with TrackMan, they might look at the numbers, but they don't kind of see their kind of shot patterns. They just look at individual shots. So they don't maybe draw the kind of feedback they should from those. But when we kind of put this up to them and go through these, okay, let's see that this guy hits, misses 8 shots. Sorry, this is 6 shots, 7 shots to the left, and 3 shots to the right. He's offline. Best ones are pretty good, but then his misses are 72 meters wide. So with the one going 68 left, 1 4 to the right, and then we can kind of start going, okay, this guy likes to play a big draw or plays draw, but sometimes it's a little bit too big. So this is kind of what we did on Monday with him, was like, okay, if you really, it's also the same thing with his irons. I can show it as well. So how do we kind of make his curve control better? So his stock shot is a draw, but if he has to send it like 40-meter hook, so to kind of take that in consideration, he has to aim so much to the right, so his straight shots will miss to the right as well. So kind of it was a good kind of way to go through the discussion, that maybe now that we're focusing more on the ball trajectory, and it's hard of course indoors because you can see the flight, but kind of getting them prepared for, okay, we are starting to go outdoors in 3 weeks, so we have to kind of focus more, put all the work that you've been doing this indoor season, we have to kind of now move it towards how to play golf. And as a coach, I think this has been really good, that to kind of see the patterns, so that we can see the ball speed, and we can choose whatever numbers we want from there. So I can kind of if I show you, let's see if I can show you.
Can I just jump in real quick?
Yeah.
I think it's absolute. I love it. I love a spreadsheet. I reckon spin axis is well, I know you got your curve left and right. I think spin axis is kind of important to look at, kind of for them to start to understand relative to their path to face, how much, or path to face and strike, how much that's influencing the axis of the ball. I know that's also then related back to where they aim as well. But obviously in that indoor environment, it's, in general, it's probably a lot easier to set up squarer to targets than being on course. But yeah, I think that's brilliant. It's great.
Yeah, and it's like with this guy, he kind of didn't even realize that he had such a big hooks while he was hitting them. So it's like, no, that felt like a little draw, and that was pretty straight. But then after like practicing on Monday, like, okay, try to hit a fade. It's like, well, that felt like a slice, and it was like a slight draw. So kind of building the feels in, because they're just hitting indoors. It's kind of hard to tell how the feeling is. Is it true or is it false? So I think that's a good way. So they're kind of more into feeling what they're doing on the shot and kind of planning the shot ahead. So they are not just hitting and try to hit one part of the screen or hit big numbers with club head speed, but it's more like trying to feel what kind of movement is happening in the face to path and stuff like that. So this has helped a lot in that way. So, but also let's see if I can. And this is what we did. I'll just have the same guy here, so he's exposed. But they did with a 7-iron, hit 5 shots, and then with a long iron or a hybrid. Especially the girls, they don't necessarily have 4 or 3 irons. So, but it's kind of the same principles. So we did it first time. This one last Friday. So we didn't kind of know with each individual player what their distances are, but this is one way that we can kind of go that now we're going outdoors. We can see, okay, this guy hits his distance pattern, his carry is the shortest one was 132.6 meters and the longest one was 140.1. So the difference was 7.5 meters and 5.4% differences. So kind of, okay, this is pretty good. You're pretty decent now, those, but if they're like really, some might have like 20% differences. So then we could kind of like on Monday we went, okay, let's see your attack angles and stuff like that. So let's see that maybe we have to work on your low point to get the distance numbers more accurate and the patterns more together. But the same thing with this guy is, like you see, that the curve pattern is, everything is a slight draw or bigger draw. And then he all of a sudden he started with the long iron. He started also missing it the other way around as well. So this is kind of what we went through, is if you want to miss that, maybe you try to curve it one way and just try to make it in control so you don't have to play both sides. But I think as a coach, this gives a lot of kind of, after the practice, that when I enter all these numbers, it kind of, you go through it again and maybe a little bit more deeper than just at the moment when you're doing it with the players. So
yeah, of course, yeah.
But this is kind of the same thing, and they did it the first time, so they get the same principle with points. So with the misses sideways, and today we're going to do, so then we're going to use also now that we know how long they hit with each clubs. So now we can also point them with the distance control as well. So, but it gives a lot of options. It's of course it's kind of, we're kind of developing all the time. So but like I said, the pluses are that the players kind of start to focus more on feel, how the shot shape is going to be. Kind of also like planning the shot ahead, not just hitting, because it's
into a net, yeah.
Yeah. So, and also kind of
how's the response been from the players, like to go through the process?
Well, they like it because it's kind of it makes every shot more, gives every shot a little bit more meaning. So then how would I put it? But when we look like, let's look at like face to path numbers, they understand it. But it's I've noticed that when we talked about like curvature and stuff like that, it's much more kind of concrete for them. So all the numbers, they are actually, even they see, okay, face to path is closed, -2, but what does it actually mean? Well, it means you're hitting a 7-meter hook with your 7-iron. And then they start feeling, okay, that was a 7-meter hook. So, okay, maybe I have to kind of feel a little different kind of face the path and next one and try to hit a little draw or a little fade, and then okay, this was only 3 meters, okay, that's it. So kind of calibrating their fields, I think this has kind of been the most, and they like it that way. So and they also they kind of see their how long they hit it as well. So now most of the players doing indoors, they kind of gain length, and that's kind of one of the goals, to kind of put more distance with all the work. But when they kind of go outdoors, they might be a little bit unaware how long they hit it with each club, so that then we can kind of send them to it. Then okay, your 7-iron is the maximum you did is 140 carry and 145 with the roll, so also they can see the rollout, so kind of gets them in the playing mode quicker as well. So
well, I guess on that as well, it's, you go a little deeper into it, you know, when I know it's more kind of high end, but even the encore stuff that we've sort of touched on as well. Like I know using a yardage book for me is an absolute Bible, but you know, for a guy or a girl to hit a shot into a green where, you know, it landed at, you know, 140 and it went to 145, that gives you a reference also of kind of the firmness of the green as well, and then how in tournament golf, how that can change throughout the week. So I think it's really important for them to kind of start to understand, you know, the carry versus roll. Well, we know we're doing this in indoor and into a net, but just to even start to think about that, because I think a lot of players don't ever think about that at all, where they're not looking at kind of their landing spot and how far the ball rolled out. Where, you know, you look at the good caddies and the good players in the world, they're looking at that on every single shot they hit into a green, and that's information they're going to bring back throughout the course of a tournament, depending on different wind conditions and temperatures and stuff like that. So exposing them to this type of stuff early, I think then allows, you know, I said more of the high end stuff, but allows us to have, you know, really cool conversations when we start sort of mapping courses and looking at other ways that kind of, you know, getting organized around a tournament.
Yeah, and the same like what we discussed the last webinar, what is good, and their expectation as well, because we can like, I know a couple of people send feedback that it's really kind of hard to benchmark for different level players. So with this as well, so they kind of they're getting points on their own kind of accuracy, because if we have a 8-year-old junior who hits it 50 meters with his 7-iron, he won't miss it a lot. So if we just give him like a 10-meter gap where to hit it, he's going to hit it every time. But if we use the percentages of their kind of distances and their accuracy, then I think it's a much better kind of way to measure their performance. So then we can kind of, okay, let's see, you got 15 points, so that's really good. And you can see like that they kind of feel also like, oh, that was a bad shot, and then you show them like, okay, it's 3.4 meters left, so it's a 2.3% miss, so that's basically tour level plus. So don't be too hard on yourself as well. So kind of their expectations are sometimes just out of this world, so it's kind of show them as well, so that was actually a good shot, so don't beat up yourself.
That's the problem with looking at, you know, tour stats. I mean, they make, you know, a lot of people think, yeah, I got to be able to do that, but realistically it's not relevant at all. But
there's lots of, like I said, lots of plus sides, so it's been a good experience for us as well. So kind of building this kind of thing, and then we can kind of point out or add something that what we want to look, and we could, like, let's say with like 8 to 10-year-old juniors, it's worked with them as well, with also our like 20-year-old juniors with the national team players as well. So they like it, and it's a way of communicating, and we don't have to show everything, or if we have like a younger junior, then we don't have to go through all these, because the smash factor or stuff like that. So keep it more simple. But let's see, Jarkko has his hand up. So
yeah, you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah. The other part from the tour stats is basically that still they hit like only 9 out of 10 to the green from about 100 meters. Is that correct? I'm not sure where they are at the moment. But let's say they still miss 10% of greens from 100 meters, which is for me, which is a lot. And then again, if you use like artificial grass, you're inside.
Can't hear you, Jarkko. Now it's.
Excuse me. Can you hear me?
Now, yeah.
That's better, yeah.
Okay. Oh, so the thing with the tour stats is also that at least for me or few players, at least you still have to be able to know like what sort of a place is there, because those are only average, and they have their pins in few meters from the edge of the green and stuff like that. So if you miss from 100 meters, you hit 9 out of 10 greens. So that's not good. Basically, well, basically it is, but with a artificial grass inside and all those like very level grass, what do you call them, like hills or something like that, but still.
Can't hear you, Jarkko, again.
What this is now? Well, perhaps I start again.
Yeah. So.
Okay, is it now better? Weird.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, yeah. Other side of that tour stats is that they hit from certain distances, which is an average, of course, but if you hit from 100 meters and they still miss green, of course, because the pins are way on the other side, let's say left side or something like that, and they try to aim it and miss it by 1 meter and miss green. And then if you do that in simulator or inside conditions where all the levels are well, all the surfaces are like excellent and give you a lot of sort of free passes, I would say. So it's a lot easier to hit it inside and that's also basically if even I can hit a day for 100 wedges within a 100 meters and they're all in or at the green, in the green, on the green. So there's also the way that why, at least for me, they seem to miss quite a bit greens from 100 to 120 meters, for example. And that's because of the pin locations, and that's why if they are practicing, those guys who are hitting on the tour 9 out of 10 greens, they're hitting 12 out of 10 in practice, basically, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
So then again, we really have to raise the bar with a better player.
Losing you, Jarkko, again.
This is unbelievable. Okay.
Where are you?
I'm at the studio. There's a lousy connection here. Okay.
Yeah, now we can hear you again.
Yeah. But hey, that's basically it. I told the thing for 3 times now. So
Yeah, I think we
Yep.
No, I think that's great. I think if you, Evan, with your own tests that we're all doing, and I know something that we'll talk, which I touched on previous, but we'll hopefully talk a little bit more about in the next one, big time, is then starting to add, as you said, pin locations to your tests. This is obviously, obviously the higher skill players that you work with, but looking at kind of that in and out of position stuff, which we talked about, and then adding that to, in your case, those indoor scenarios, so actually start applying some of those misses to the left and right relative to, so if you look at the point systems that you guys are putting in place and relative to percentage of dispersions or whatever the scenarios are, then start to add some pin locations to it, or on tee shots, can you start looking at out of bounds, hazards, bunkers, left and right. So you can start to change some of those point systems to look at that. I think that then changes, that then gives them, a very, very different outlook on kind of how they start to try and execute shots. And then further into that is then, we look at, if you then look at dispersions, you should start to look at dispersions by where you're aiming, not by where the target is.
Exactly.
So the pin's tucked hard left, and it's dead left. Well, we're not going at that anyway. So you're right though. When you look at tour averages relative to how their dispersions over time, well, how many of those shots do they hit where the pin was tucked in a position where it doesn't suit the eye, it doesn't suit their ball flight, so they aim completely different. So dispersions actually should be relative to where you aim if we get more into it.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. Yes, exactly.
Which is a very different scenario. But as all you guys and girls know, that when you play golf, how often do you actually hit it? Well, I hope you're not hitting every pin, but how often do you actually aim at every pin and work your way from that? It's always a start line and finish line. So your ability to start it on your aim line and finish it to a dispersion relative to that shot length, I think is more important than the pin itself.
Yeah, and I think if we have some kind of measurements from players, I think it's like I mentioned earlier, it kind of makes it easier to communicate and talk with the player, like course management and stuff like that. So let's say that, like this guy that I showed as an example, he likes to play a draw or a big hook. So maybe if the pin is tucked in the right side of the green, maybe that's not a pin to go to. So because he's going to start missing short-sided, or maybe just try to kind of or maybe aim at the pin and let the draw come and kind of in the center of the green or so. But kind of opening the opportunity to kind of discuss these things, that what is kind of the shot to play in different pin locations. So.
Yeah, as I said, when you drill further into it, and even in the indoor scenario, when you start looking at pin location and then challenging, I don't know, Jaakko, you had the ball shape, which I think is fantastic, and then start to put parameters around the ball flight. So trajectories being certain heights. I like using spin axis because spin axis gives well, for me, that's the way I look at it, around curvature and kind of what is a good amount of curvature. We know curvature is affected by, face path and impact as well, but can they execute that shot with the right amount of curvature to a certain pin location relative to their aim line? So then you can start to really sort of drill into their ability to really control their ball flight. Which, as I said, it's when we think about, I know this is more on the pointy end of stuff, but then you can start to then sort of drill that back and down into, club level and junior level and stuff like that. Obviously, you're not going to be exposing them to information and numbers as such as that, but pretty quickly that the level player that they can't or can execute certain shots anyway. So I think the more of those kind of game type scenarios that you're able to implement in practice, two parts, it more importantly allows them to ask you guys as coaches and girls as coaches, why can't I hit that shot? Why can't I, every time I try to hit that shot, what happens? And then that allows you, and you guys are very highly skilled in the technical part, allows you then to be as technical coaches to be able to implement, okay, we need to work on X, Y, Z, whatever it may be.
Yeah, and there's a way that I use that ball shape practice as well is when you of course practice a lot of your time in Finland, especially like half a year, you have to be inside, which makes you a sort of a machine in creating those numbers. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's the place to put them feel more. So the other part is when they are on the par 3, and I'll ask them, what club would you shot? And he said the 7-iron. Okay, take a 5 and make it work. So basically, they have to feel a lot more with that. So that's the idea with the ball shape as well.
Yeah, perfect.
Good. I think
I
Jenny has
have a question. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
I have a question for Hank. How often do you do these tests? Is it just like once a month or?
Well, actually, at the moment we're doing it every Friday. So.
Okay.
So we might do that, like we have like performance Fridays. So it's kind of it might not be always the same. So today we're actually going to combine the driver and the irons. So we're going to do 5 shots with the driver, 5 with the 7-iron, and 5 with the long iron or hybrid. So kind of going through that the things that we are doing on. Usually we have Mondays a kind of technical day or when we go through these feedback and stuff. So this is kind of it's practice today as well, but it's practice with a different kind of focus. So kind of it's kind of measuring their kind of week's work. So
okay.
So
I think that cycle of test and review. We're constantly a test, review, debrief, review, test again, or practice, test again. It's I think that way of looking at kind of how they practice, that then makes things a lot easier, especially if they're used to that kind of environment. Then when they start playing, obviously tournament golf, they're actually expecting that type of response from you guys as coaches, that I actually want to review my tournament or my round of golf. I want to understand more about what I'm going to do, and then what does next week look like relative to the time that I got or the tournament that I got. I think that's very important.
Yeah, and I think one thing is that like they are limited to a certain amount of shots on today's practice, so it's a different focus when on Monday when we practice, they're not limited to the amount of shots, and we don't record their shots. We might use the TrackMan with them or video or whatever, but they're not recorded that way. So they are more kind of trying different things and trying to get the feel. And then on Friday it's kind of like, okay, now you're on the course with 5 drives. Let's go. Let's see, has anything changed? Can you perform under a little bit of pressure? So it's and then you can also see what happens if they start when they have kind of a score of their practice, then does it change their way of like moving or behaving? So kind of it's a good way of looking at that as well. So do you have any more questions? You have your hand up.
No.
Okay.
That's a short.
You just like that you found it as well, like you should.
Yeah, I didn't know that was there. Didn't know it existed.
Any kind of can I ask Jenny, you send a kind of feedback about difficulties building this kind of template you try with juniors and different level juniors. Can you kind of open up a little bit that what the difficulties when kind of designing this kind of template or tests? Or
no, it was more about compare if you want to compare to same level juniors, just finding some data. I didn't have time to look for it.
Yeah, and I don't know if maybe Marty, Jussi, you know better, but is there a lot of kind of different level junior skills test kind of data available, or is it just with the national teams and so? But I think Jussi will share a little bit in a minute.
I know stuff that Use is involved in this as well, but stuff that we're working on at the moment, which I know stats program that I work with. I actually, when you think about junior development or age or skill, it's in some ways it's maybe a little bit easier by score range versus age, because, you could have a beginner that's starting at 40 versus a beginner that's starting at 10, and they could have the same score range. Yeah. So potentially looking at score range relative to, we know that obviously kids can't hit it as far as adults, so that changes dispersion patterns and stuff like that. But I think we're pretty close to coming up with or having enough information around score ranges relative to dispersion patterns, which you can then say, I've got an 80 to 85 shooter. I know the stats program that I use, an 80 to 85 shooter. That's what the average dispersion from whatever distance. So then you can start to then go, okay, for that person in that area, you can then put a test in place to try and, beat the score as such. And then you can obviously then, like what you guys have done, you can get a point score related or however you want to do it. So yeah, once we get, hopefully before our next one, we should have, some more information around that. And then obviously that makes it a little bit easier, but I think, to some degree, I think everyone agrees when we compare against strokes gained, it's a bit unfair. It's just, it's not quite relevant to some degree, but it's nice knowing what the best are doing. But I think even within your own coaching, you can kind of go, well, if that's what the best in the world are doing, well, the person in front of me relative to what I think should be around here somewhere. So, and Evan taken he or she through a skills test and looked at her dispersion rates, say it's a chipping test, and look at her he or she's dispersion rates. You can then set up your own little individual plan to go, okay, you calculate the total feet or total meters from the flag over 5 shots or 10 shots around a green, and you averaged X. Well, let's put a little target together. Okay, we need to improve that by 2 or 3 meters, and this is the technical information I think that's going to be able to, or the management information I think it's going to be able to help you to be able to execute those shots. So it's like what Jaakko's done there. It gives you a great opportunity to expose them to kind of what is good, which is what we talked about last time, and then allow them to ask us better questions about kind of how to get better. So I think that's kind of the real reason behind kind of testing that. And then I think I would have said it, I'm pretty sure I said it in the last one, is that I actually like doing a lot of, the filming, like your Fridays, Hank, that to some degree, I was just thinking about then, to some degree, Monday is a good technical day to debrief and look at stuff, but Friday is a better day to actually record footage. Friday is a better day to, if you got your 3D system, is to actually capture them moving, trying to execute those shots in the 3D system, to then on a Monday to then debrief and look at how they move when they're trying to execute shots.
Yeah.
It just allows you to, especially in your environment at the moment, you can actually do that probably a little easier than where I am at the moment, but where you can kind of really sort of wire them up and look at kind of how they move when they're trying to hit, like Jaakko's ball flight, different ball flights, how they're trying to hit those ball flights, what does it actually mean, what are their misses, and then that gives you a couple of days to kind of really review and have a look, and then put some systems in place on Monday to really kind of move in that direction, or whatever you guys decide.
Yeah, I think that's really kind of, well, I have to say, personally, I've improved, and that has helped me improve. That it's not because I think many of us, we do tests, but if we don't review them and give feedback from them to the players, I think they're just, then they're not purposeful, or we are not using them as well as we could. We get a score or a number, but if we don't kind of open it up to the players and open it up in our own heads first, like, okay, what does this mean? Okay, this kind of starts making sense, and kind of building a bigger picture and what is really important, and then it kind of benchmarks for the player as well, like, okay, did you see like last month, these were the numbers and now you're here. So you're really improving, like, even though you're not maybe feeling, you're improving, but the numbers show that you're going in the right direction. So let's just do this and kind of
building confidence in practice. Yeah. No, I think it's great.
All right. Any other questions about building those templates, or questions, troubles, anything that came up, or something you want to share? If you have a good test or template, you can share it with us as well. So before we go to, I think Jussi will be up next with the national team testing. Don't be shy. Come on. All right, Jussi. Good to go.
Yeah, sorry, I'll turn my microphone on so you can hear. Yeah, we've just come back from a warm weather training camp in Dubai, and it was eye-opening in the sense that, you know, it's the first time since September that a lot of the players have been on grass. And yes, we've had them together indoors and, you know, done various TrackMan tests and, like, you know, same kind of problems that, you know, we've discussed, that, you know, you're hitting into a wall and you don't really see ball flight and whatnot. And, you know, we've done some of the short game putting stuff. And, you know, the perennial problem I guess we run into is that it's an artificial surface that's usually flat, and it's usually and then B, it's in a vacuum. So all the kind of environmental stuff doesn't really come into play, and it can sometimes give you a false picture of what's going on. So kind of our idea, me and Petteri, who have just started as a coaching team, I mean, we've kind of spoken with our stats guy Jarmo, and you know, we've got a pretty good picture of where our players are at the moment. And kind of one of the things that we've settled on, one of the themes that we've settled on as that we want to be good at is we want to be best in the world at third shots. So, you know, whether it's holding out in a par 3, whether it's kind of a third shot into a par 4 or a third shot into a par 5, that, you know, we're striving to be the best we can at those areas. So one of the things we looked at, I mean, I'll come back to that in a second, but one of the good things about COVID was some of the rabbit holes that Marty, you and I and some of the guys went down in trying to establish, you know, benchmarks. Okay, well, you know, what does good look like? And just kind of touching back a little bit on what we discussed there a couple of minutes ago around, you know, how hard it is to find stats, for example, for juniors. So, you know, kind of compiling data on score ranges, handicap ranges. We've got, I feel, a reasonable idea of comparatively what good looks like. And based on these, we're able to then kind of put some benchmarks, performance benchmarks in place for our players. And I'm happy to share this if anybody wants it. I'm quite confident that this is very close to what it should be. Maybe not absolutely 100%, but, you know, it's pretty close to where we want it to be. So again, looking at particularly with the girls and ladies, which is my immediate area's responsibility, that the biggest area for improvement with our players is par 5 performance. You know, we're relatively speaking, we're quite poor at capitalizing on par 5s. Number one being the going for the green in 2, and number 2 on top of that then is the conversion from around 30 to 40 meters. So for us then to kind of get a better picture of how we can improve that, we decided during our last camp then to really go to town on some of these areas. So couple of basic tests we use. on the left, the 12 ball short game test. Marty, you might recognize that. A good friend of ours, Graham Walker from England, has been doing this for years. What I did with that was just basically just made it into a 5% test. So kind of looking at it from left to right. So we've got the various different shots. So the chip and runs, the player score, and then the target scores are in yellow. So what is 5%? It kind of says it in the smaller text, and the actual percentage that the player then scored on each one of those tests is on the right hand side. So I mean, we were able to then pretty quickly identify areas of need. So with this particular player, I've just picked one of the girls for us to have a look at. It's pretty evident that the major amount of work that we needed to do was in bunkers, kind of short, medium pitch shots, and kind of greenside lob shots.
Sorry, you say how many shots do they hit on each?
Once. They hit each shot once.
Once, okay, so it's 12 balls.
Yeah, so they get to practice each shot. Kind of they get to have a look at all the shots. They can't hit them from the stations, but they know exactly what they're facing, and they're told beforehand what they're facing, so they're allowed to practice them. And then when it comes to the test station, they can only play each shot once. We have done it a couple of times before, where we've kind of had them play each one 4 times. So play 4 rounds, and then kind of get an average score. And all they do is that they literally just count the number of feet that the ball ends up from the hole, and just to kind of save time, as invariably you get kind of first time on grass after a long time, you get let's just say you get a few mishits. Yeah. So instead of pacing out, the one you knife out of the bunker 30 yards over the green, you just, we made it simple in that if it's over 15 feet, you just write down 16. So which can, it can sometimes, maybe it's a little bit generous, but, it was more kind of space and time. So, and then also with putting, the test on the right that we've got from the guys at Gameforge, which kind of gives a pretty accurate picture of kind of where we need to be in terms of in comparison to LPGA and Symetra Tour players. So the target, 10 random putts, 3 to 8 feet, 10 random putts, 9 to 20 feet, and 10 random putts, 20 to 40 feet. So again, on the last one, on the 20 to 40 feet, goal is 0% or better. So to average 2 putts or less 3 putts than 1 putts. We're looking at 9 to 20 feet. We would like to be somewhere around kind of 20 to 30% if we can, and 3 to 8 feet, then anywhere from 60% plus. So kind of based on the results, again, we saw 3 to 8 feet pretty good, 9 to 20 feet and 20 to 40 feet not so good. And that's not to say that the player, like all the players hadn't practiced them. The environment they had practiced them in had been flat, sterile, indoors, no break, no grain, no wind, and so forth. So we kind of decided to put them under the gun a little bit. So again, kind of the battle plan we came up with was, and the emphasis was to try and reduce the number of short game shots during play, and number 2, improve proximity to the hole. So, I mean, to put very simply, I mean, this may sound stupid and simple, but anytime you have a short game opportunity, you only need 1 attempt at it. I mean, that's, the amount of time. So we're including in this any shots from inside kind of 50 yards. So if you're 50 yards from the hole, the goal was for the next shot to be a putt, so that we minimize. So and the amount of times we saw even during play was that you have a 50-yard pitch, next one is a bunker from over the back, and then you follow it up with a chip and 2 putts, and you make needless double bogeys. The priorities then kind of based on observation, simple things like start line and spin control, even the quality of strike, you know, hitting into the grain, down grain, uphill, downhill, versus flat lie, into the wind, downwind. So again, all of the environmental factors are huge. So we had a couple of basic tests or basic tasks for the players, which we had them do around short game. So we started everybody out from 10 yards from the hole. So from 10 yards, you must make 5. So this was time intensive. So once you've made 5, you move back to 20 yards. Your goal is to make 4. 30 yards, you make, so then you make to 30 yards, you make 3. From 40 yards, you make 2. And from 50 yards, your goal is to hole 1. So again, it gets players used to the idea of actually, you know, not necessarily just getting on the green, but actually hitting it close enough. And we saw dramatic improvement in terms of proximity as the kind of the trip went on. The more they did this, the scatter pattern of the golf balls in relation to left and right. So we were looking really from 50 yards, using aim point, about a 1 finger miss either side, which works out about roughly kind of maximum 3 meters. Bunker shots, again, we're lucky with the facility in that we had a variety of pin positions, so we were able to set up 4 different types of bunker shot. Short-sided, kind of a 10-yard bunker shot, kind of up high, and one that comes down like a baby's nappy, and then one a little bit more long and running, and 2 kind of regular mid-range shots. So the goal then was to hole 1 to each flag from the same spot, and then change position to another bunker and replicate. So kind of 8 total hole outs. And the other one we had on wedge shots was kind of a V-shaped dispersion cone. So we set up, I think it was 10 targets. So we had 4 or 8 cones in a V shape. So 4 on the left, 4 on the right, and 2 in the middle. So basically, the idea was that if you're aiming at a left cone, you cannot land left of the line of cones. So you cannot miss the ball cannot land on the short side, and likewise on the right side, the ball cannot land on the right side of the cone. The 2 middle cones, you were able to pretty much take it.
Center.
Yeah, they're basically center. So the goal was just to simply try and knock over as many cones as possible.
Yeah.
Again, effectively with the emphasis being on start line and spin axis control. And in terms of putting, with a very much a performance focus on the putting. So we set up 18 holes on the putting green. So 15 putts of between 9 and 20 feet. And every sixth hole then was an up and down. So it was just a chip and run, or just a pretty basic greenside shot. So holes 6, 12, and 18, you had to get it up and down. But the rules were each player had to choose a target score. So they were allowed to scout the course beforehand. And they had to come up with a target score themselves. So for example, if you were doing this, Marty, you might choose -6. You'd had to add another one. So that became -6 became -7. So it's just a little bit above your comfort zone. If you leave any first putt short, you're straight away back to 0. You're back to the start. Sorry, if you 3-putt, you're straight away, you're back to the start. Or if you miss an up and down, you're straight back to the start. If you leave a first putt short, it's a draw, -1. 1 putter length drawback, and you just hole out. So basically, the emphasis of it was not only on putting, but also we incorporated short game into it as well. That everything always came down to an up and down. So you had to get it up and down on the 18th to actually to get through. So for anybody then achieving the target score, let's say it was -6, we then had a follow-on task where for a further 6 holes, or during a further 6 holes, they had to better that score. So they had to go from -6 to -7. And on the putts, if they missed on the low side, their score was immediately back to 0 and had to start the task all over again. So again, a lot of this was based on some of the stats that we showed earlier, and just to kind of put players into that performance environment as well, where they're very much target orientated, with the knowledge that there's also a score element involved as well. So again, what was the ultimate outcome? And all of this is well and good, but if there's no kind of so what, then it's kind of useless. So again, on course, what we tried to do was we tracked everybody's performance, and kind of, if you're looking at shooting level par or better, we're trying to keep putt totals and putts and short game shot totals to under 40, with the goal of eliminating multiple short game shots, particularly. So at the start of camp, we averaged about 95 short game shots per round. And by the end of camp, we were down about 30 shots from that. So we were able to kind of cut that total down drastically, just by kind of those interventions. So yeah, that's pretty much kind of how we went about the 2 weeks in the sun, and for those that are heading away again next month, then we kind of plan to carry on from where we left off.
Sorry, Jussi, can you go through? I kind of missed it. How did you count the 95 short game shots? What was?
So 95 short games. So this is for the group. This is for everybody in the group. So
okay, so that's the whole group.
So pretty much all the shots.
Okay, okay, all right. Yeah, now I got it.
Yeah, pretty much anything inside a full swing. So kind of, I would say roughly kind of 50 to 60 yards in. So kind of finesse shots, short game shots. So, yeah, and again, it was kind of interesting then, watching players put into those practice situations on course. Having spent a significant amount of time, sometimes kind of in a block practice environment, hitting onto hard surfaces, maybe kind of a downhill bunker shot, or kind of a short bunker shot down, onto a downhill green, short pin. They were actually able to stand up there and kind of pull it off without hesitation. So that was kind of cool.
That's brilliant.
Yeah. So, one of the other things then that we didn't do as much, simply because the TrackMan overheated so much. We, similar to what you were saying, Marty, about kind of tracking proximity. I have a test set up on the TrackMan, kind of 30 to 65 meters, where we start players off with 100 feet in the bank, and we just simply see how many shots they can play to random targets from 30 to 65 meters before they run out of 100 feet. Yeah.
Brilliant.
So I think the best is something like, the few times that we've done it, the best is something like 15 shots or whatever.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Do you think, Jussi, this slide that you have open and shared, do you think is something you could share with the group? I think this might be beneficial, like Jenny mentioned, like seeing what is good in different levels might help.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, I said, I'm happy to share this. I'm confident that this is kind of, it's probably not 100% correct, but it's a long way there. I mean, we've
because I think this is one of I might be only speaking on myself, but I think this is something that we mentioned earlier, that benchmarking might be something that we are not sure of what is good in different levels, and maybe communicating with juniors or younger kind of national team players, stuff like, okay, where are they to get to that level, and what is like in scoring and different parts. So I think this would be helpful for many, at least myself. So
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I'm more than happy to share this. Yeah, no problem at all. And any of these, you know, if anybody wants these, you know, I've got a whole Excel file with all our kind of test battery as well. Happy to share these as well. So no problem at all. Or anybody who wants them, they can just get directly in contact, and I can send them out.
Can you convert it to English?
I can. For you, anything, mate. Actually, I can convert it to Aussie if you want.
Well, yeah, that's a good point. Not English, Aussie.
Yeah. Data with an A.
Yeah. I need to look at the data.
Yeah.
One question, you see, do you have like from the national camps, do you have on record like the results of the test from like different aged players, or like the girls team or ladies team, men's, boys, stuff like? Because I think
I have them on another computer, right? I'm in the middle of changing computer, so I have them on another computer. Some of the testing that we've done from over the last year. So actually, I think I'm just going to stop sharing this one. I've got, for example, from we had an Olympic group day a couple of weeks ago. I can just give you an idea. Bear with me here.
We're just admiring your picture with the.
He loves that picture, doesn't he?
Yeah, that hasn't been photoshopped at all, I can tell you that.
The biceps.
So again, this is bearing in mind that this is indoors. I thought this was quite impressive. I mean, Sanna, who's more than likely heading to Tokyo in a few months' time. We did the 160 to 205. Now, bearing in mind it was indoors.
Yeah, I remember you sharing this. Yeah.
Yeah, she said to me before the test, and what's the best score you've seen? I said, well, it's around 5%. So she said, right, I'm going to better that. And she kind of banged out 10 shots in a row, 10 random shots in a row, like average 6 meters from the hole, 3.28%. And she said, well, if anybody beats that, can you let me know? I just walked away. I thought that was.
She dropped the mic.
Well, she didn't have to do anything else. It was just like, same with short irons. Short irons she didn't do. I mean, Ursula was pretty good. Same again, kind of 3.8%, 115 to 160. Wedges. It's like everything. A lot of the time, the closer we get to the hole, the worse players get in terms of kind of percentages. They were kind of hovering around consistently around 5%. Not a huge amount of variance in that. Same with the short wedges, 30 to 65, kind of 5 to 10%. So. Some pretty impressive numbers there. So again, like I said, anybody who wants those, who wants get their hands on these, I can just send them on them. They're pretty easy to use. So, nee, keine Problem. Is this in Germany? So,
right.
Yeah. Again, just kind of for in terms of the girls and ladies, one of the areas we're going to focus on, kind of on the next camp is specifically par 5 performance. So one of the areas we're going to spend a bit of time on course is actually playing every hole as a par 5. So we're going to play the course at the Ellis Club is, it plays reasonably long from the very back tee. So we play a lot of the holes from the back tees, and then kind of par threes and short par fours. We'll drop a ball on the forward tee and play that as a second shot into a par five. So 9 holes would be a par 45, and the goal is going to be to shoot 40 or better.
What is, in your opinion, is when you mentioned that basically the closer or shorter the shot or closer to the pin we kind of go, the worse they get. So if any conclusions or feedback from you, like is it a technical issue, or is it kind of a course management, like choosing the wrong kind of shot or club? Do you have any kind of
I think there's 2 elements to that. One is technical. I mean, there's a break, and Marty, you probably know a lot more about this as well in terms of movement. I think around kind of probably 35 to 40 meters is kind of the breaking point where the technique starts to change.
Yeah,
kind of goes from
wedge,
kind of a finesse sequence to more of a swing. So kind of where that gray area is where we typically tend to see the kind of the biggest issues.
Yeah.
Number 2, I would say a lot of it is kind of understanding, controlling, awareness of land angle, for example. And this is kind of where the difficulty, again, kind of indoor outdoor practice comes in, kind of hitting onto slopes. A lot of players, not all, but a lot of players that just only tend to play one ball flight with a wedge. It's either kind of a high flop or it's a kind of a low spinning bullet. So as we know, that just doesn't work. So it's just having the awareness and appreciation of how the ball can actually, how a golf ball stops, through land angle spin. So, doing that outdoors is just invaluable. And Marty, what's your view on that kind of on the wedge stuff there?
Well, I think that range that you're talking about is, I think we all experience as players. It's that kind of in between. It's no longer a chip shot now. It's turned into a pitch shot versus a wedge shot. Obviously, relative to the strengths and weaknesses of the person who's doing it, relative to their length. So you're right, and then there's, as we know, I think because there's so many variables, it's in regards to kind of how many different options you can have inside, say, 40 meters. And then at what point does that turn into, more fundamental kind of movement to how you want to see him or she move through full swing? So, which I think that's why it's so important that you put those little things in place there, because I think the more the time that we spend in those areas, that gets exposes them, and 2, kind of what you see, and then exposes you to see how they actually can perform, and then measure it in different ways, if it's through TrackMan or 3D or just even skills testing in itself. Allows us to kind of really start to really drill into kind of what we can do to help going forward. Excuse me. That's not COVID.
Nah, there's no COVID in those, man.
What about you? Do you have any kind of message to the coaches listening that what now we're pretty close to moving outdoors, but in the last kind of month of indoor season, in which parts should coaches maybe pay a little bit more attention to from in indoor practice, so they're more prepared for outdoors? So
I think, having observed all the players on course, I mean, I think Marty, you touched on this earlier on, is kind of spin axis control or kind of aiming and dispersion, right? So being very particular with start line. you know, it again, and I quite honestly put a lot of it down. Some of the issues that we had, we just put it down to environment. I mean, you know, you're coming from, as I said, coming from indoors where the target is kind of 5 to max 10 meters in front of you, to all of a sudden you know you're hitting into a wide open space, uphill, downhill, taking wind into account.
Yeah.
You know, and just kind of, I think a lot of players, not through any fault of their own, I think they just kind of struggled with kind of start line or send line, you know, where they actually want to, you know, they're picturing a certain shape of shot, but how they actually produce that in relation to their environment. It took quite a while to actually adjust to that. And you know, that's more for long shots as well. But I think as well, it somehow feeds into short shots as well.
Yeah, it's definitely a different, very different focus. What about from the coaches that are with us, you know, their experiences over, you know, time? As you said, Hank, you know, you got sort of 2 or 3 weeks or a month before you sort of really can get out and get on the course. What's their experiences in regards to kind of getting, call it tournament ready or golf ready, on course ready? And any ideas of kind of how they can, you know, different ways that they can go about, or experiences that they can share that's kind of on the back of everything we've said tonight and other weeks to try and help, you know, to make that step a little bit easier.
Yeah, any ideas? Open mic, don't be shy. So
Always throw this in at the end, trying to get you guys to talk.
we have Jarkko, he's now on fire. So go ahead, Jarkko.
Good.
You told me to be.
Right. That's right.
Yeah.
He paid you well.
Yeah. Well, typically in the springtime, as I have my whole simulator box here, I make them play a lot more. So they have to change clubs at least frequently, which of course helps. Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay, so that's at least one part, and then, as I said, try to make them do as much as field shots as possible when they start, and usually when we have made a bigger sort of swing change during the winter, then I sort of tell them to go to the course at least few first rounds, sort of not to play the golf game, but to execute those technical things at the golf course with the scene that you have. So basically that's something that they probably shouldn't be thinking at first. At least that's what I tell people, that do not start to think about the score yet. Start to make those swings that you do inside now so brilliantly in the outside environment. So that's basically it, and it sort of helps, because if they tend to shoot like whatever, but plus or minus 5 to the score that they think they should or something, then they usually start to make the old habits come back if you think about the scores too much and not to be able to execute the scores that you think. So try to make those first rounds to be like the practice to make that swing outdoors that you have been indoors. That's basically it.
Very good.
Anybody else with ideas? Yeah, Bosse, go ahead.
Yeah, I have a question for Jussi. That have you noticed that is there, like, on the national team or the other teams, are there players that are good sort of test players but can't really pull it off on the course?
Sorry, I had my microphone off. So do the players test better than on-course performance?
Yeah, sort of. If there are players that are pretty good at the tests, but aren't that good on the course.
I'll be honest, we don't have enough test data yet to be able to make an accurate correlation. Because I think, and Marty, correct me if I'm wrong as well. I was speaking to somebody about this recently, and kind of an individual skill test will not tell you an awful lot. 20 will tell you something. 100, you have a decent picture, and 500 tests, you've got a pretty accurate picture.
Yeah. my experience on that, I've been fortunate, like some of those tests that you just brought up tonight, I'd be pretty close to the 500 mark with some of the athletes that I coach. And is there a direct correlation? I know when they test well, and I know the benchmarks of where they can test relative to their performance, and I know that if they're at that level, they're pretty much good to go. I think your question now, I think it's rightly so. I think when you get the smaller sample sizes of some of these tests, you go, well, geez, he or she tested really well over there, but can't perform. That's not correlating back into their performance on the golf course. I also think that also gives us another opportunity to then look at the kind of mental aspect of the game as well. You know, how well are they, yes, they can execute the task in this scenario. Physically, they can do that. How well, and they can, and then, as you said, put a scorecard in the back pocket, how well can they translate that into performance? So that also exposes them to, you know, well, your skill level is X, performance level is Y. Can we then start to look at different ways of then implementing some improvements in you know, it could be around pre-shot routine. There's so many areas around that part of the game that, you know, we could talk for months on. But you're right. I think, you know, the bigger the sample size, the better the correlations to understanding the players that you work with. When they are moving well, they swing this way, and they can, in general, perform quite well. And I've had that too. I've had guys in positions where they're testing well and gone on one in the next 2 or 3 weeks. And then I've also had guys that have, you know, testing great and they've gone out and performed poorly. And most of the time they perform poorly because there was outside stuff going on in their own personal lives or, you know, business and life in general. So, yeah, as we know, there's so many variables to kind of why we perform the way we perform, but at least measuring the raw skill-based stuff, I think is a good starting point. I didn't know the numbers were that high use. But yeah, that makes more sense. And I know speaking to, you know, Eduardo about sample size and stuff like that, does obviously the more information, the more data, DARTA, we have, the you know, the better it is, I guess.
Yeah. And I think, you know, for me, kind of reflecting on it now, it would be interesting to see once kind of after mid-April, once all the players are kind of outside on grass on a regular basis, and then kind of start to do a little bit more kind of testing as a group to see, and then measure that against performance to see how it stacks up. Kind of, and for what it's worth, I mean, we had a tournament towards the end of the camp, so it was kind of the last 3 days we had a 54-hole stroke play tournament. And some of the worst scores we saw in the last 2 rounds, and just simply because of fatigue. So it was non-golf related factors. It was just kind of diet, hydration, rest, maybe lack of recovery. So yeah, that's kind of where we're at right now.
Yeah. Any other questions?
I'm good.
Cool.
Do you have Marty in Australia? Do you have kind of in the Victoria golf or in the whole country, kind of these kind of, how to say, universal tests on different skills that you can kind of gather than the bigger sample size that you do?
They call it the battery of tests. When I was obviously involved with Golf Australia, we were putting some tests in place. A lot of the tests, I mean, it's the nicest way, were tests that I was currently doing. So some of the short game stuff and everything else. Is there no? The quick answer is no. That they don't have, because as you know, even with all the coaches in the room, does everyone have access to track bands and different? There's so many variables, and then when you start looking at short game, and I was talking to this with one of the guys the other day about short game testing. Everyone's course is different, pin location is different, the grasses they're hitting off is different. There's so many variables, but at least having that's why I guess testing against some form of strokes gained or benchmarking against score ranges is probably somewhat easier or better than trying for everyone to do the same style of test. So the quick answer, I think they're still working towards stuff. I know they had the long-term athlete development program that they're trying to benchmark over different stages of their development career, if you want to call that. But yeah, there's no direct test, and I think, and that's I think the cool part about testing is that I think if you have raw information in regards to kind of what are the benchmarks, I think the art of creating these tests is what you guys have come up with tonight, is how you guys are able to make it quite variable, and we can all look different, but we all can come back with very similar information at the end of the test. I think that's important, because I think to tell, and this will be interesting for you, Hank, over the next period of time, at what stage does that test become somewhat boring for the player? Because it's like, oh, we're testing Friday again. You know what I mean? Like, so how can we still get the information that we need, but maybe adapt the test in different ways?
Yeah.
And I think that's the art of coaching, isn't it? How can we do that relative to the player or the person in front of us? Is, okay, we need this information because we know that, that's good for us. And, but how can we then adapt with the people, the squads, or, the programs that we work with? How can we then relate that back to kind of keeping these guys and girls involved in the testing Friday or whatever it may be?
Yeah. Do you see kind of other negative or downsides in testing? Like this, maybe it might be, if you do it the same way every time, it gets boring or unmotivating for the players. But do you think any other kind of mistakes that coaches might make with, or is it interpreting the data? Or
I think you touched on it before, and I've used this in regards to using stats programs as well. I think like any of us, even us as coaches working with, you go back into your own golf, unless you're getting feedback on why we do something, you really start to question pretty quickly, why am I actually doing it? So if it's putting your rounds into a stats program, if your coach is not looking at that and giving you feedback on performance of a tournament or whatever it may be, you lose sight. I find that as humans, I think they lose sight pretty quickly that obviously he or she's not that interested, even though I should be doing this, but I'm not getting the feedback. So I think it's, I think if we have an expectation that this is important, this is why we need to do it, we need to have the same passion in giving these guys and girls, debriefing and reflecting on kind of their results as well, because that allows for both parts. If we think it's important, but that gives buy-in for them, like they can see there's a direct correlation, or this means something. And I think there's enough information that we've got, between Use and I and the other guys we work around, the world, that, and not just in golf, in other sports as well, that, this type of kind of improvement training works. I think a lot of us spend too much time trying to guess or hide behind numbers in regards to using 3D or, TrackMan and whatnot. But the reality is we need to be performance based. And I say that in the nicest way. And as I said this, I think many times, that, I'm the most technical, arguably get told I'm very technical because I've got, all the devices in the world, but I see that's just allows us to ask questions in regards to performance. That doesn't, the way they move or the numbers that they produce, unless you've got performance information, it really, you're just guessing.
Yeah, I think so. So the follow up is one of the most important part when doing testing and stuff. So you kind of doing with players, so feedback and follow up.
And unfortunately, it's time consuming.
Yeah, that's right.
It is, like what the spreadsheets that you guys are doing and putting that information in there. And, that's time, unfortunately, you guys predominantly don't get paid for. But my thought on that is that also makes you're developing and makes you a better coach. And I think long-term you build better relationships with more players, and, from a business model point of view, I think it's like all of us, I think the guys and girls are the best at what they do. We spend that much time for, giving up our time because we see that the rewards aren't always here right now in front of us, but we understand that that's actually something we need to do to get better, to be able to be a better coach.
Yeah, absolutely. Good. Any comments from people in questions?
Is there any hands up? I can't even...
No, not yet. Jussi, come on, use the reactions button.
I'm going to do it.
Oh, yeah.
I'm getting the hang of this now.
Obviously.
Yeah. Cool.
Good. Anything else, Jussi or Marty, you would like to share before we end for today about maybe the next
Yeah, do
webinar?
you want me to touch on, so just for the coaches that are obviously involved tonight, but more importantly I think if I'm able to get what I think that's going to happen, I think I'd like to have every single coach in Finland involved, and every single national player or good player involved as well. I think that this needs to be opened up to the room. But a good friend, a friend of mine, Eduardo Molinari, which obviously everyone hopefully knows who he is. He's still out there playing on the European tour, but his background, he's got a double degree in engineering, and his background working with statistics and training. And I've been fortunate that him and I sort of crossed paths. I was probably now about 6 or 7 years ago. He was off doing his own thing around training. I was doing my stuff around training and measuring. And I gave him, like I talked about the other week, I gave him a lot of my stuff around kind of stuff I was doing with Dr. Matt Bridge at the time. And he's now moved into, he's developed, it started with spreadsheets, but he's developed now into a platform where it's an actual measuring platform on an app that version 1's just been released, which from a training point of view for the guys and girls and working with the athletes, it's just, it's amazing. Anyway, I think it's amazing. I think it's great. So it looks like we're going to be able to get him on board and chatting to, spend well, it's my night, but your day with you guys, and going through kind of where he is right now and how he's developed, what he's done. He's just an amazing golfing brain, you know, and the fact that he's out there competing, you know, and keeping a job, and also now working with 10 or 15 of the best players in the world in the background as well, which kind of says a lot about kind of what he's doing, how he's doing it. So fingers crossed, it's all looking pretty good. I know Hank and you know, you and I will go through and talk to Eduardo about kind of finalising a date and a time that kind of suits everyone. Hopefully, probably by the end of the month, if we can, pre-Easter, if not straight after. Yeah, it'd be very exciting.
Great. That sounds really good. Really good. Any questions concerning that, or anything else pop in the mind in the last 5 minutes? No?
I think that's really cool.
Yeah.
Great.
Love it.
Okay.
Brilliant.
So that's all for today, and thank you, Marty, thank you, Jussi, and thank you everybody for listening and asking questions. So let's just start putting those in practice. And probably, Jussi, will you share your tests with everybody, or do you want everybody to kind of send your email if they want?
Yeah, I mean, if everybody wants, whoever wants them can get in touch. I'll put my email address in the chat, so you can get in touch. So happy to send it out to anyone who. I'll put my phone number in there too. Anybody wants to send me a message, so that's good.
Great.
Perfect.
Yeah. Love it.
Okay. Thank you, everybody, and have a great weekend. And we'll get back in for the next webinar on the date when we kind of can lock it up with Eduardo and see when it is, but around Easter time.
Brilliant.
Perfect. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Be good.
Bye bye.
Bye.